Rock the Ripple. Rock the Ripple. The Rock the Ripple podcast with Narita McInnes.
Let's do this. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rock the Ripple podcast. I'm your host, Narita McInnes. It is so awesome to be here with you as always. And as always, today is another very exciting day because I have another very special guest on the show. She is a wife, a mother, an incredible homeopath and speaker, an online course creator, the founder and CEO of RMDY Collective, and a powerful advocate for providing holistic education in homeopathy to empower people to become healers in their own right. There is, of course, so much more to this amazing woman. She is the beautiful inside and out Melissa Kupsch. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Now, did I just butcher your last name? How do you say it?
No, I think you said it right. Kupsch, didn't you say?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You know, we only got married last year and the marriage celebrant said it wrong. I was like,
oh, really?
You nailed it.
Oh, woohoo. Yes.
Yeah, well
All
done.
right. Feeling great now. Now, you are a seasoned speaker and you have been on many amazing podcasts. So for those people, as you know, if they're just coming across you, who is Melissa? Tell us all about you.
So, I mean, you sort of said it all. But yeah, really where I'm at now is sharing homeopathy with the world and really sort of raising up another generation of homeopaths so that we can, really change, I think, the way we view health, disease, and our spiritual wellness. That's really where homeopathy works. It's on the human spirit. And so when we look around the world today and we're sort of, we can see that a lot of people they're sick, they're sad, they're bound up in their addictions and the historical sort of trauma, I think that some of the loops people are playing in. And homeopathy is sort of like a chain breaker in those aspects. So I really feel that right now, the world is sort of ripe for this level of understanding. If you were talking about this sort of stuff, as I'm sure you probably were, 10 years ago or more, it didn't seem as if the level of understanding and consciousness was there. But in the last couple of years, it's like something has just opened up. And all of a sudden, it almost seems like it's obvious that the mind and the body and the spirit are integrated and that to heal one can heal others. And so I've just seen a massive boom and demand for understanding, and people want knowledge of how does my body actually work. And I guess the shenanigans of the last couple of years has really made people want to know for themselves and just learn and deeply heal. We're realizing that old symptom suppression model is just so outdated. People they don't resonate with it anymore. So homeopathy is, I think, the modality that so many people are looking for, whether they've realized or not, what it is that they're seeking. So yeah, that's really where we're at now.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I mean, I love homeopathy. Like for people who've never heard of it before, or they've heard of it, but they don't quite understand how it works. Can you explain that a bit for people?
So it is an energetic system of medicine. So more and more people are coming to understand, even in mainstream science, it's continually these revelations are being made that at the fundamental core of the human body, but also the entire universe around us, we are humming, vibrating energy. So they see this when they look at the atoms and the cells that make up a human body, and they break that down into its smallest counterparts, just smaller. At the very core of it, what do they say? We're 99% empty space and this humming, vibrating energy, which is mind-blowing, for some people, but that really is all of nature, this humming energy that we see and perceive as solid matter, sort of slowed down, for us to perceive it. So when we are looking at distortions in our energy at the core, that is what then can go on to lead to the pathology of disease. So things that can interrupt the energetics of the body, so serious traumas and stress, that can absolutely, be a spanner in the works. If I was to give you an example off the top of my head that people sort of really tend to understand, let's say an example of sexual abuse. A woman has been violated and all of the energy in that area can become distorted. And what you'll see in those women is that they will have issues with recurrent UTIs or endometriosis, or, bladder infections, or vaginismus, where like all the muscles are so tight and sex really hurts. And of course, it's a response to the trauma, but the energy in that area has become distorted. And so if we are to heal the whole woman, it's an energetic medicine that we must use to budge that back into alignment so that she can relax. Those spiritual wounds can sort of be healed. And so whilst that's only one example that makes sense, the other thing is, say the people who have lived their whole lives, perhaps with a dominating parent, or they grew up with really strict religion, or they married someone where their voice was not heard, and all of the energy here can become distorted. That thyroid can be dysfunctional. They can be prone to the tonsillitis. They get their tonsils out. Their glands are always swollen. They're immunocompromised. And the thing is that their spirit has been suppressed and the energy becomes distorted. So when you go to the doctor and you say, I'm getting these recurrent issues going on and I don't know. And the doctor says, all right, another round of antibiotics for you, or all right, steroids here. And they're trying to help you through it, but their toolkit is so limited because they have not yet understood and acknowledged the link between such things. And because they don't have a remedy that works on the energetics or works on the spirit, no amount of drugging can really get to the root of the issue there. So you see the little loop-de-loop, and disease processes often get worse and more sinister over time with the more drugging that you do. So essentially with the human organism, a symptom is just a message. It's saying, hey, something's out of line here. Something's not working. Now, it might be that you're working in a job that you hate and your body is physically responding to its distress. It might be you're in a bad relationship. It might be that you have inherited down your family lines very distorted energy patterns, from our mum and our dad, the sperm and the egg. What we're given is an energetic blueprint from each of them. And that's what grows forward to be us as a human being. So if they had things that were really amiss in their family coming down, if they got schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, anxiety, there's a good chance that you have inherited some of that, electrical aspect of that energy. So that's really the essence of homeopathy. We are taking from nature very unique substances and we are harnessing the vibration from them. So in a pharmacy, they are going through a very specific process where we are trying to extract the energy from that substance. That's what we are giving people to take under the tongue, and the body responds.
Yeah, it's so freaking powerful, isn't it? It is. And would you say it's treating like for like, or like when you're doing that? Yeah.
Yeah, because and that's really the essence of homeopathy, is we must find the substance that matches your distortion of energy. So the frequency that you are, exuding, and you'll know what frequency someone is at when you examine their entire life. You look at all of their physical issues, you look at all of their mental and emotional issues, and then you're going to match it to the profile of that substance in nature. So the example I used earlier of the woman who's been abused and violated, and now she's got all of these genitourinary issues, that correlates when you read through the books of what the Staphysagria plant does and what it causes, and you're looking at anger, violation, bitterness, resentment, urinary tract infections. It's all listed there. And because we say that like cures like, when you take that Staphysagria and you introduce it to the body recognizes it and it goes, oh my gosh, what is this vibration that I'm being flooded with? And in response to that, your vital force, the energy within you, your human spirit, it mounts a response and it pushes back against the Staphysagria. And that's when your symptoms will fall away. So it is important that you're finding the right substance, that right frequency that your body will respond to.
Yeah, it's so powerful and so interesting. And I'm sure that this happens a lot. I mean, I've done a lot of homeopathy as well too. And sometimes you've got to tweak it a bit, and you might have to, but you're also removing layers, aren't you? So you work on one layer, and then when you've sort of I can't remember what the terminology is, but then you then unravel the next layer. Is that's sort of how it works, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's why when you see a homeopath, and there is a bit of an art to it, because the homeopath is trying to discern what is the most pressing layer, what's the most dominant issue here that we need to remove first. And then we might see more clearly, okay, what's under there. And definitely, I would say in people's healing journey, if they are really trying to heal over a couple of years, perhaps, issues that they've had for decades, you will probably use a few remedies in that process of clearing.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, so you do that. And another thing that can happen is you can aggravate, can't you? And I think this is the thing. People who haven't done homeopathy just don't realize how powerful it is. And then when you have a bit too much, you realize that shit, this thing is just so powerful, isn't it? And I think that's just what, you know, it's important for people to know that how powerful it is, because it's just this tiny little thing that you're having, and it
Mm.
makes a world of difference, and it's changing the world. Like, it is, I mean, I think it's used by over 16 million people in India or something like
Yeah.
that. I can't remember the last stats, but
The World Health Organization rates it as the second largest system of medicine in the world. So per users, Western medicine goes, number one, it's sort of rammed down your throat. Everyone knows it. But
mm,
second to that is homeopathy per the number of users, which is kind of crazy because in Australia, the average person on the street doesn't know about it.
mm, mm,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yet.
yes,
But
yes.
in regards to the aggravations, it's interesting too, because we debate this, in our academy, say Peter Berryman, and we're asking, okay, with the aggravations, is it a true aggravation, or is it, it's that healing has been triggered, but
Mm,
sometimes it's almost always a productive element of the homeopathy. So if you take a remedy and your glands swell the next day, it's that your vital force has been activated and it's trying to address like a viral load potentially that has been dormant in the body, some pathogens, some detox response. So you take a remedy and then you get a splitting headache. It's like, has it done something wrong? No, it's done something fantastic, but it can be really uncomfortable. So when you have skin conditions, for example, like eczema, if the
mm,
patient has used steroid creams throughout their life, then they take a remedy. What some homeopaths would call an aggravation, which is the eczema comes all up onto the surface. Really, when you look at it through the lens of healing, it is a healing response. It's almost always a healing response, but it's sort of the duty of the homeopath is trying to make it as gentle, but as rapid as possible. And you're always weighing that up. And so with my patients, I will always educate them beforehand and say, look, this can be a bit messy. It might need to get a little bit worse. You might be detoxing before you're really, feeling a lot better and you get to that sort of next level of vibrancy. And because people understand what they're doing here, a lot of them are so like they buckle in for the ride. They're like, yeah, I'm committed. And so when those old memories come back up and they're processing and they're crying so much more, they're embracing it and they're happy because they're like, movement, my spirit is cleansing.
mm.
So yeah, there's a different opinion on aggravations probably between all homeopaths. Some are a lot more conservative and cautious and some are more liberal. So a
Mm.
whole range there, but there's absolutely an art to it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I'm glad I brought it up, because I do agree with you. When you're healing, it isn't always smooth sailing. Like, I say this when I'm doing other stuff. Like, you're bringing shit up, so stuff's gonna go. Shit will hit the fan a bit. But
Mm.
you just be prepared for that and allow for that, because that is healing. If you want to clean your house, if you declutter. Like, if there's shit everywhere, then there's gonna be shit everywhere. Technical term, of course, Melissa.
Exactly, for sure.
It's so powerful. And I know I've listened to you speak a lot of in a lot of podcasts, and just also just on your Instagram page. You're always just dropping knowledge bombs everywhere. I mean, I know a lot of people know your story and how you got into it, but has been one of the biggest catalyst moments for you to get into homeopathy, and that fire in your belly to make such a change? Because I know how passionate you are about this, and you are moving mountains. And I love watching it.
It's so funny because I have this conversation with my husband of, because I am I am so passionate. It's so funny. It's like this energy within me. It's like when I just discovered it for the first time, when I saw it in action and I saw it work, and I thought, oh my gosh, it felt like the Holy Grail. You find something that's true, and you also find something that historically everyone knew about back then. It was much more famous, of course, in the past than it has been suppressed to be now. And so you feel that, yeah, fire and passion within you to be like, everybody deserves to know these fundamental truths about the body. And so I would read, and I loved it. And I would read about the history. And I've got this one book, and it's called The Faces of Homeopathy. And it's my favorite book because it details all of the old accounts of the first homeopaths, who were all doctors back then, pretty much. And they found homeopathy and they thought, whoa, this is a way better way to heal people. And it became, so famous. They built all of their hospitals and they were thriving. And their passion, when I read it, it's like just, you recognize in other people, like they were as obsessed as I am. And it's something that you can't help.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes I probably, I do feel like a level of responsibility for, I really want the future to be different to the trajectory that sometimes it looks like we're walking down.
Mm.
And, I do get a front row seat from all of my consults into the amount of suffering. Like I worked in fertility even for 5 years, and the amount of people who, by virtue of their history, of the amount of drugs that they've taken, the things that they've put in their bodies, like it's really, their bodies are struggling to make a baby. And a lot of these people are young. We've got 20-year-old males with no sperm, like no sperm. So it's heartbreaking, to see like your brothers and sisters really grieving, what they're going through. And I can't imagine, how different life would feel, if I just was never able to have children. It's what I always wanted. So I really feel that for them. And so when you look at like our children and the future that we want for them, you want it to be really different. You really want things to turn around, and it's not just going to be in the sphere of homeopathy that it has to happen. There's distinct pillars that we need to like foundationally come back to. Because I was speaking to people recently, and no matter how many healers you go and see, we need to actually change the way that we are living in general, because we shouldn't have to be running off to the healers every week to say, fix my energy, to keep up with this toxic, stressful, unnatural way of life that we're now living under.
Mm.
And I just think there's become so many rules and regulations and expectations, and you've just got all of this red tape around our normal everyday lives that people are suffocating. And, we just need to be free. We need to be allowed to just sort of like live and exist without this endless, cycle of what we're currently feeling that we have to be put through. And we know it's always a choice, like how we actually live, but you've got people after paying their freaking groceries right now, people who can't afford meat and food. And, so you watch all of that going on. And yeah, I said to my husband, it was probably like a month ago, I was like, oh, just with everything that we're doing, and I do move like quite fast in what we're creating and doing. I said, oh, babe, I'm tired. And I would rather sit back, and I would rather sit behind someone else who's like going forward. There's going to be some man who's going to come in and he's going to take the charge, and I will happily sit under him and like fight fully. But I don't want to be the person who's, I guess, standing up first to say, hey, this is unacceptable. The way that we are living is unacceptable. The whole thing needs to change. And then he's just like, I've been with you for 9 years, and like, as much of a burden as if you ever feel that it is, he's like, you physically couldn't stop. He's like, it's just within you. And he's like, so that's where, when you're tired, that's where I'll come in and like, I'll protect you then, so that you just keep going and keep pushing forward and creating. And it is a beautiful thing, because I think as we move forward, like say with RMDY Collective, we've got now 550 students signed up to be homeopaths, which is a phenomenal number, because I'm not sure there's even that many homeopaths in Australia current. It's an outrageous number that we don't normally see. And as we move forward ourselves, I think we give space for all of them to come up and like shine their own individual lights. And I guess the path will be ever so slightly cleared. But it does feel like, even though there are people around the world doing incredible work for homeopathy, people have been devoted to it. You know, they feel the same way we do. But I guess we've just attracted in our company, we've attracted so much attention that sometimes it feels like, oh, this is a lot. But, you know, I think people are just called to certain things, you know, and if everyone just keeps playing their little part and just surrendering to, you know, whatever this journey is going to be, that's when, you know, things really change. So yeah, that's a bit of a personal insight to how I feel.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you shared that because you are a powerhouse, and I was smiling the whole way through because I was waiting to hear what your husband would say. Like, obviously, you've got to do this, you've got to lead, and I love the relationship that you guys have. That he said that to you as well, that he'll support you when you're feeling tired, and
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's such a like, you know, you'll hear people all the time talking about the masculine and the feminine elements.
mm,
And it's so interesting to me because, you know, for me personally as a woman, like I do need to feel like safe. Like you can feel in your body the level of stress when you're forging through with something and maybe you're seeing like resistance. And just for me personally as a woman, like I do not react in the way that like my husband or other men around me react. Like I just watch my husband and he just doesn't move. It's like they've got that warrior energy of like, you know, fighting for things. And in my experience, there's so many women around me who have like, we've got this like creative, intuitive, beautiful, compassionate, like care factor. And I guess the way that I sort of see it is, you know, I used to hear the old biblical analogy, like the woman is like the neck, you know, we turn the head and we say, look over here, there's like something wrong and we need to fix it. But
mm,
having the men actually step up and fight like for it and really like protect that sort of energy as well, I do think is really important because yeah, I'm not personally sure that it's in our like biology and like our makeup to be able to be as warrior-like as men, like relentlessly. That's just something I'm seeing at the moment. But yeah, so to have my husband and, you know, it's so sweet. He's like, you know, because he left his job in construction to be home with our 3 kids while I was working.
yeah.
And, you know, he's like, you know, my life, like sort of my whole point is like that I'm meant to like protect you and like what you're doing. He's like, I don't think I have my own thing that's super important. He's like, my super important thing in this life is like looking after this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like, you know, you just look at like how people get partnered up and yeah. So yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And like as you're saying that, I'm just like, you guys were meant to be together in this lifetime for you to be able to do the work you're doing, to be able to have the children you're having, to have the support you've got. I mean, it sounds bloody beautiful, mate.
And that's the thing. I think God really directs the path of like everybody, like so
Mm,
far before you even realize what or why and who you're meeting, you know, all of the connections that you would have from all the people you've met. And I think we're all sort of like networking at the moment and we're meeting up and we're creating things together. And yeah, I think a lot of us, we were always meant to meet. I know we had a party at the end of last year and I guess it was our first like company Christmas party. And we had people like flying from all over Australia. And the comment that I got so often that night was they couldn't believe how familiar these other people looked that they'd never met. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was literally thinking that because they seemed familiar to me.
mm,
And you know, you sort of do think to yourself, like, was it always predestined? Like we knew that, you know, because half of those people are now signed up to study homeopathy. I ended up employing 4 of the people I met
mm.
at that party. You know, someone say to me, like, as they're leaving, they're like, by the way, I'm an accountant. If you ever need one, I'm like, oh, okay. I'll remember your face, your name, I'll find you. And like we had a regenerative farmer come in and he's like, look, you know, homeopathy is great, but it's like we need to get back into regenerative farming. I was like, okay, come. And so it's just this all interconnected. And I think we really do have everything and everyone that we need to create what we want. But it just, yeah, that trust and that faith that we move forward together.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the things, like through the podcast and through people I'm speaking with, that big thing of trust, that trust and trusting the timing. And like when you were talking about as well the party and everything, I feel like I just got this feeling of just soul family coming back together and just knowing. And I love that everyone just felt familiar, even though they hadn't met, and probably some they would have as well, I'm sure. But it's so beautiful, isn't it? And just trusting the timing of everything falling into place and knowing that you're on the right path. Have you
Mm.
ever felt off kilter and like you're not on the right path, or anything like that?
Honestly, when I look back at my life and sort of every aspect of it, I almost look back now as like, that that had to happen. And so every part of it seems important. And so I guess I've gotten to the point now that when I'm sitting in discomfort, or if I'm sitting in a level of fear for whatever reason, it's really pressing in internally and I'm seeing it grow me.
Mm,
And it's often when you step through that season, right? And it's always in retrospect, you look back and you're like, ah, yes, that was a really important season. And I can see what I learned there. I mean, even for me, postpartum, I had 3 boys who were aged 3 and under, and Maddie was at work like 12 hours a day. So I was just like solo, isolated, like low key going bonkers. And, you get through that season though, and like, boy, doesn't it strengthen you and your resolve and all of that. So I think it's also really important. And I guess that gave me the real conviction that we need to change the way we do life and motherhood. And even for me, with a really supportive family, extended family, and all my friends, that isolation that women feel when they're having kids and that exhaustion, it's unnatural. Like, where I think we are really made for communities, even if they are smaller, we should be sharing that workload together. And I think every day, I don't think when you're a stay-at-home mum, you should just be going for a coffee with a friend for an hour or two a day. And then that's like, yeah, cool, tick off my social thing. I think we're made to sort of like be with each other at our houses and like cook together, clean together, let the kids play together. And, all of those things that now I have in my life, I wouldn't have realized how important it was had I not personally struggled.
mm,
So yeah, I think it really is all perfection, really.
mm,
And when you really tap into yourself, I think you can be guided and pivot your path quicker. I don't think we necessarily have to sit in our suffering to keep learning, although the truth is that many of the most enlightened and beautiful and brave people that I've ever met, they really have suffered immensely in their earlier life, but it's through their victory and their breakthrough that's what makes them so phenomenal now, and helping others because they actually know and they've actually experienced. So I guess hard times are not something to fear, but I'm happy to sit in the peace and the joy as often
mm.
as possible too. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you just exude joy, Melissa. Like you just like when listening to you all the time, I love it. I love it. And I know that people will be resonating with everything you say because it is so true. Those moments, those things that test us the most, they grow us the most. And I agree as well. We don't necessarily have to sit in our suffering and wallow in it. If we realize that we're in a place that we need help, we seek out a homeopath. We do some work, okay, how am I going to shift this? And it's doing that as well is learning to trust yourself too. Okay, there's something here for me to look at as
Yeah.
well. So that's all part of it too, isn't it?
And it's like that age-old sort of cliche of like, the kingdom of God is within
Mm,
everyone. Everyone says, go within, go within. And I think you reach a point in your life where you have that moment and you realize, oh my goodness, that is the essence of it all. God is in me and in everyone else around me. And I definitely have found that in my years consulting, when I have spoken to every single person, it doesn't matter what their life has looked like, what they've done, what they've been through, you see the Spirit of God reflected back in every single person. And so you understand that we are all connected and sort of born of the same spirit, I would say. And so to do good to other people, it really is, as they say, to do good to yourself. It is good for your soul. That is what really lifts people up and makes you feel good. And I think if people really understood the essence of that, we're going against that indoctrination that we've been born with, right? That it's like, it's about me. I've got to protect myself, and it's about my life and what I can achieve and what I can create. And when we realize that it is all of us together, that to do good to other people around you is what really makes you feel good, I think that's where people really sit in that peace and that joy. I don't think until you have that revelation of the Spirit of God within yourself and that you are a co-creator with God and everyone else around you, I'm not sure that you can feel, that level of peace.
Yeah, I say that all the time. Everything begins within. That's where we start. That's where the magic happens. And if we want to see a world that is thriving, then we ourselves must thrive.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
we support each other. Like it's such a beautiful dance when you can look at it that way, because obviously the world's gone a bit crazy and mad as well too. So, but we're
Yeah.
here, I believe, to shift that. Do you feel that too?
And it's so funny, right? Because I don't know if you've seen this too. And it was that big swing, right? Where we're seeing the world go wild. And it's the balance of wanting to point like at what's so crazy and so wrong. And then we've seen, I think probably in the last year, everyone having that revelation of like, oh my gosh, it's so wrong. Oh my gosh, they're trying to distract us again with all of that crap. And they're trying to use all of our creative power again for their advantage of look at everything that's wrong. And so I've seen a massive swing with a lot of people where they are literally now like within, I'm going to make my life as beautiful as possible. And I know that the ripple effects of that is going to be reflected in the world. And so holding those two realities of like, okay, I can see externally there what they're trying to do, but I'm not going to let that rock the beauty that I'm creating, and I'm going to keep going. So yeah, I definitely think from within. And when people realize that that external vibrational world is quite literally a reflection of what is within us, you become the most powerful person on earth. There is no one to blame. You're not a victim. There is nothing. It is all learning, it's experience, and everything that's reflected is just to help you grow. It's probably people need some level of conscious awareness to get to that point. They need to have experienced enough of life to see it for themselves of like, oh, wait, oh my gosh, I'm at the center of all of this. It's me. I'm the creator. But when they hit it, I do think that's amazing.
Yeah, because we are. We're the creators. We really are. And we're co-creating this awesome planet together. And what do we want it to look like? Like we can, I'm so glad you said that as well, because yes, we all got caught up and looking at what's going not right and all that sort of stuff. But if we want to create, we've got to create the solution. So what do we want that to look like? How do
Yeah.
we want to play in the world going forward?
Yeah. And so often we've been told, well, this is just the way it is. I'm pretty sure
Mm,
my parents would have said to me,
yeah.
as old when I'm saying, oh, this is so corrupt. This is like, so what's going on here? And they're more of the generation of like, yes, yes, it's true. Yes, it's obvious that it's all very corrupt. Yes, this and that. And I think there's a lot of us who are coming in and we're saying, but why? It doesn't have to be. And for whatever reason, and it's not just young people, there's a lot of like people in their 60s who are also like awakening to it doesn't have to be this way. Somehow
Mm,
our consciousness has pierced through this sort of veil, and we're remembering, sort of what it could be like. And as many of us who can, if we keep sharing, the way that we see it, the way that we want it. So say, for example, something that we're really working on at the moment with Remedy is we've had this idea to create what's called Remedy Ranches. And that is,
mm,
we've got the healing centers, we've got the regenerative farm, and we've got the alternative schooling all on one block. So trying to buy bigger land parcels and really, have this like beautiful sort of little ecosystem in each community. So we're starting with a model one, first in Queensland, where you can figure out the little nuts and bolts. How can this work and be sustainable and benefit everyone who's involved? And I'm certain once people see it done, people will realize that's not that hard. We can do that here where we live. And sometimes people just need to see it or hear about it, or, have the people like come into place where everyone's willing. But, since the last couple of years, we've got teachers everywhere dying to create something beautiful for the children out in nature, permaculture, teaching them to grow things, real life skills. And so you've got those people there. And my goodness, you've got a lot of healers. A big driving thing for me has always been to sort of reinstate the homeopathic hospitals where people can actually go in a time of need and they can lay down in a bed and they can be cared for by homeopaths who have a massive dispensary of all of the remedies, and they've got the training and they've got the number of homeopaths that it requires to keep this functioning. So no one's getting burned out. It's just like a fun party. When I used to read these history books about those old homeopathic hospitals and all the homeopathic nurses and all the things that they were treating, it's like I felt this grief that life was not like that anymore. And I felt like, oh, why couldn't I live back then? Like, look at them. It's so beautiful and amazing. It was only 100 years ago. Like, why? And then to see now that we are going to have that. And I'm watching all of these students form these friendships like all over Australia, all over the world. They've got their own little meeting groups now. And I know that they will be banding together to create this in their own states and serve their communities. So, yeah, you've got the different pillars of things that we can do. But I think once people see it done, then it's easy for them to break through, and I guess it's that effect of, what is it, the 100th monkey or whatever it is, where we just need to reach this critical mass of people who go, oh, that mainstream schooling system is not really the best for our children. And there's many people who are coming to that revelation, but we just don't have the systems set up yet. But when we do, it'll be an obvious choice. If you can buy your produce from a farm like that in, your local, everyone's going to do it. Everyone wants to be a part of it. And so, yeah, just creating in that way.
Oh, I just love that. Remedy Ranches, bloody brilliant. Great name. That is just so good. You like
It's
this,
like, sometimes once you come up with the name and then you're like, I got to do it. I've got to see. I was watching Yellowstone at the time when we were in the sauna. Like, I'd watch an episode every night in the sauna. I'm like, oh, it's just so like majestic, and then it's like, and you just imagine the fun things that we could do. It's like you'd have your beehives and like people and the kids learning to make honey, getting that beeswax. And then you've got your cows that you're milking, and you can sort of supply people with wholesome, fresh food. The kids at the school then get to like sell like, all the market produce to the local families, or when they get picked up, they sell it. And it's like everyone's learning, and it's a much more natural, integrated way of living, because I think we really do need to get back to that if we are to thrive through the next like however many years. That would really safeguard us. It's almost like we want to beat these globalists at their own game and sort of start to pool our resources and get our land back and, grow it. I remember once, this was probably, like a year or two ago, and I was having a coffee with one of my old uni lecturers, and she's just phenomenal. She's, I don't know how many degrees she's got. And she actually lost her job at this College of Natural Medicine of 20 years because because of the mandates. And so she was just really cool. And I said, if there was one step that would sort of get us on the right path and sort of safeguard, our future, what do you think it would be? And she's like, oh, absolutely. Just like farming, people learning to grow their own food. She's like, that is the biggest step in a revolution. And I was like, really? I was like, you think that's number one? And then over time, I've like come to realize, of course it is, for our own health, for our own self, reliance, sustainability. Of course it is. And it like brings communities together. And yeah, anyway, since then I was like, oh, you are right. That is. So yeah.
Yeah. When I'm listening to you, like my heart is just expanding so much. And I just feel like, even though you said before, like our warrior men, like you are a warrior woman, like you are here to change the world, woman. And like, I can feel it happening, and I feel your passion. I mean, I was listening to a podcast yesterday with someone in America saying that they're doing the same thing just with the schools, but to be able to do the whole ranch idea, I just think it's bloody brilliant. And I think I was listening to you, it might have been a few weeks back, there was some big hoo-ha going on in the world, and you did this video around coming back to grassroots, starting from the ground up, and this is everything that you're expressing now. And I mean, I'm keen to know when it's going to come to life, mate. When's it starting?
It's so funny. We've had so many of our students and they're like, what suburb are you going to be living in, Mel? I don't know. We, yeah, I think when we look at like the future being local, right? It's one thing, like I'm really grateful for even Instagram where we've gotten our word out and all of our students. But in regards to like real human connection and joy every day, you cannot get that from looking at a video of someone, and we've become very unnatural, right? Like people are busy on their phone looking at other people's children rather than their own. And it's a cheap, what's the word? My dad always says it. A cheap, not sacrifice, it's a cheap. Oh, it's just not the ideal of what you really want. What you really want is to wake up and go to a place like Remedy Ranch where your kids can go off, you can work in the healing center, or you can volunteer and work somewhere else, and you can be around other people. Like we are made for that life of like community and safety and ease and just connecting, having dinner together. And it doesn't have to be, some big, weird, like culty thing, like some, historically things have gone to. It seems like for us, and one thing that I really love about, I guess, Remedy is that we are like magnets for these people who are really cool and that we're really on the same page. And, you're happy to have like a bit of, your own space and privacy, but you're completely committed to the well-being of all of those around you. And so these relationships just work and everybody feels like they're winning. I think we've been conditioned to think that, if someone else is winning, like we feel like, and it's just not true. There are ways of doing business and community where everybody feels like they're winning. And certainly by the standards that people live today, when we, move on to that phase of life, I really do believe that so many of us are going to feel like this is like heaven on earth again. This is what we've always wanted. And, some of us have the resources to get these things going. I think we can't be delusional and say to, the mum at home who's on a single wage, like with hubby, and she's doing her absolute best. It's like some of us, for whatever reason, have the gift of resources. We have money to be able to get these things in place. And once you build the groundwork of it, then they can come in and contribute. But a lot of people just don't have money. So maybe there will be a time when, certain people start to, pool their resources. You might have 4 families who go in and say, we can all contribute and we can buy 30 acres and we can set it up together. Those sorts of solutions will work. And I think we'll see more and more of that over the next, 5 years, 10 years, definitely, I would expect.
Yeah. And with you leading the charge, mate, I can see it happening. I really
imagine people just said, okay, because so they get to use the name Remedy Ranch. If, you sort of catch up with them, they're legit, they've got a team of people. And it just makes it easier, I think, when you've got a name, because people associated with what you're trying to create, it's just an easy meeting, I think, of people when you sort of come under some sort of thing like that, and you get to collaborate together and you can say, well, this is what we're doing and this is how it works, and streamline our model and how it is successful.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when you look at things going on in the world and stuff like that, the human spirit is so powerful. And really, when shit hits the fan, we're in there. Everyone's helping each other anyway. And that's what it should be like all the time. So,
it should be 100%. And it's funny that exact you know, in a crisis, you see people pull together like never before. I know Maddie was talking about during the floods or bushfires, and you see people drop everything to share anything with their neighbors. It's like, oh, you don't have a house, come stay with us. You don't have food, I'll cook for you this whole week. Like, that is the nature of the human spirit. And I think the more layers, and especially with homeopathy, the more layers of the trauma and the separation that we remove, the more we look at other people and we realize you're a sister, you're another sister to me, and you look after each other, you know, in that way, and you're not self-serving. And so, yeah, I think that, you know, event, you know, things like the bushfires and the floods that bring people together, for myself, my husband, and many of us around, we are looking at the globalist agendas, and that is cause enough, like that is crisis enough for us to lay down everything else and say, if we collectively as a humanity, if we're to make it through this and thwart them, we must come back to that remembrance of how important every individual is, and everybody can contribute, and all of that. So yeah, definitely I think that human spirit is the key, and they would know that. And that is precisely why in every way they try to divide us on opinion, on politics, on any riffraff that they can. And so seeing through that, as so many of us are, I think we will be fine.
Yeah, we absolutely will be. I mean, and that's the thing, and it puts that fire in your belly even more, because I mean, we're in this play, this game of life, and we get to choose how we want to play it, and we're now showing up and just going, game on. This is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, yeah. And really choosing, like I read a book like last week. Have you read A Return to Love?
Yeah, Marianne Williamson.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Oh,
ages ago, but yes,
yeah.
yeah,
Did
it's
you like
beautiful.
it?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, yeah, I loved it. And it really is all of those key aspects. We can't harden our hearts to whatever it is externally, you know, that's going on. And even when we're, you know, looking at the globalists, it's like you keep that open-heartedness of like, I see what you're doing, and I'm going to love everyone and everything anyway. And I'm going to keep continuing on this trajectory. And that's how wars are actually won. That power, that spiritual power that we gain from remaining in that, it just is above. We become untouchable really to any forces of darkness. And even in an energetic sense, and we're going off a bit here, but I have been so interested in this in my practice in homeopathy of, you know, how spiritual entities actually work. First off, like, do they exist? How do they work? How do they attach on? How do they start to throw people's lives so off kilter, whether it's like an addiction, an obsession, or whatever it is? And I think in those moments where we're talking about, we always have the option of going with fear or just going with love. And it's really that simple. There's fear and there's love. And the way of God is always love, and that Christ-centered like way of living. And I do believe, and what I've seen with my patients is that when you choose that love, you become untouchable to those darker entities. Because I've seen many people who are really trying to do the right thing, say like your typical Christians who are straighty 180, and they're trying to do like biblically da 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 da. And so it's like they tick off all these things as like, no, that's evil, that's bad, that's da 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 da. But you can see the fear in them when they are all of that. And I've seen that from their life, it doesn't reflect the beauty of what they're trying. The reason they're trying to be so rigid is because they want to be so pure and feel so good. And that fear is what allows these things to come in and attack and wreak havoc. Whereas if you simply in every moment choose exactly as Christ had done, to love, to forgive, despite everything, you just have no fear and all you do is love, it makes you untouchable to any of those darker energies that would ever even be in your peripheral. And so when, you know, Jesus says like, I am the way, I don't think he meant like himself personally, he means the way that I live, the way that I have showed you. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And it's like that makes you untouchable.
Mm.
Anyway, that's sort of what I got from A Return to Love. But I thought it was really profound. If anybody's listening to this and you haven't read that, I think it's a really good book.
Yeah, I remember when I read it, I think I put all these little sticky notes in the whole thing. I'm like, I might as well just done the whole thing as one big sticky note. But it's a powerful book. It's a powerful book.
Yeah.
And, I really resonate with that. The work that I do is around frequency, and the frequency of love is unshakable. And when you can stand in that and stand in your power, that is when, and I mean, like you said, it's so simple. You're choosing love or you're choosing fear. Why? And like to be gentle with yourself, to recognize that maybe you don't realize that you're doing that sometimes, and to really, I mean, and that comes back to learning about yourself and remembering who you are and the power of who you are too, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I guess a lot of people, they get the love your neighbor. My dad used to say this to when we were young, and he's like, you see a lot of people, they find it easier to love their neighbor, but very few people really truly love themselves.
Mm.
And that's a real loss. That leaves you quite open, to like a lot of negativity and all of that, because, well, if you don't love yourself, you probably don't recognize the divine within you. And so that's an issue unto itself, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's so true. Like, obviously, as we've been saying this whole time, everything begins within. And if you're not able to give yourself the love that you need, then you can't express that outwardly, and you can't see, like you said, that divine spark within. And I think a lot of coming back to who we are is doing that, and it is loving ourselves and knowing that we deserve love and we're lovable and all that sort of stuff too. And I think that's what's so powerful about homeopathy as well too, because you're removing the layers and the blocks that are holding people back from actually feeling into the true essence of who they are, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And when people have that understanding of that, like their vital force, even, such an intelligent, beautiful thing that flows through them, that remembers every hurt, and has been with them through everything. It's like, how could you not like look at your precious body and mind and spirit and think like, what a beautiful thing you are, like always protecting me, always working for me, even your adaptations, even the OCD, your anxiety or your need to control, you are always just trying to work for me. And yes, we can heal that and we can recalibrate it, but that self-love, and that really allows people to love others. Because I think if you have a level of self-rejection, no matter how deep, buried you think it is,
Mm.
that's going to reflect surely in your outer world in a rejection of others. Because if you reject yourself, that's how you feel. Whereas if you can reach a level of understanding about just embracing all of who you are, surely that opens the door to just accept others as they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Mic drop.
Mm.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I could talk to you all day. I don't know how long we talk. What is on your heart at the moment? Like, what is the biggest thing that's on your heart at the moment that you would love to share with the world?
Mm. Biggest thing on my heart. So much of what we have, or I feel like I've already navigated this conversation
Yeah.
around exactly what's on my heart. But
Yeah.
yeah, just that level of loving, of choosing to love even when it's hard.
Mm.
It is easy to love others when they are openly loving to you, when they are speaking kindly to you or supporting you, and there's no reason. But I think in those times where if somebody has questioned you or criticized you or doesn't approve of you, if you had a parent who puts their things on you, I think one of the most profound things that we can start to do is just choose to love anyway, and watch that mountain, that issue, that resistance that you've held your whole life, watch it just fall away in just like moments where you choose to like keep your heart open. I think as we go forward, and it's such a cliche thing, isn't it? People say, oh yeah, we win this war with love. But the reality of the ripple effects of that on other people is that we would very quickly dissolve all of the issues, all of the things that they're trying to hype us up with. And, you know, there are people who are spending hours a day on YouTube and researching and in their rabbit holes and doing all of the things. And yet we are giving away too much of our time and consciousness to something that's not productive. We want to have just enough of an understanding to know, you know, what game it is they're playing. But as soon as you've got that understanding, just go within yourself and like really ask, like, what am I here to contribute towards? What is my passion, my love? And for some of us, it might be that art, you know, that is our thing that we are bringing to this world. We're bringing beauty and stillness and things to be appreciated. And for some, you know, it's things like teaching, and for some it's healing, for some it's farming, for some it's could be the most random job you've ever thought, and yet it's personal to you. And there is no job that is too little for God to use and bring greatness to. You know, okay, this is a really random like segue, but I think of this woman often in those times when I was a stay-at-home mum and I was knackered, like I was so tired. And my thing that I would do is like I'd go and get a drive-through coffee and I'd listen to a podcast. And that would be like my, yeah, okay, that's good. All right, now let's go to the park and play with my 3 kids for 12 hours. And but there was this woman at the petrol station down the road from us, and I would go in, and she was maybe a 50-year-old Indian woman. And I would go in, and man, she was just so beautiful to me. And it'd just be like, hi, sweetheart, how are you today? And, you know, just this like literally just this little interaction. And I would walk out of there and just feel like, oh my gosh, I love her so much. Like I am always going to fill up at this petrol station. She's off and on. And it's like, even in a job like that, some of us have jobs that are just where, you know, in a shop, like doing that, we're in a retail aspect, but you're interacting with people. And no matter where you are or what you're doing, you have the opportunity to, you know, make people's days and show them just that little glimmer of God every day. So then, you know, I go forward, I get in my car, I'm like, oh, hey kids, all right, oh, this is good. This is a good day. And yeah, because I think sometimes people think that they have to be doing some big role, or they have to be in the spotlight, or they have to have some sort of following. And I think that's so untrue. I mean, having a following is so overrated. It's so like, it's not a vibe. And yeah, so just like love whatever you've been given in this lifetime. And maybe that's just your family, and you're sowing all of your love back into your family and just existing in this world in a space of love and joy. And I think that is really, that's revolutionary.
Yeah, I love that you shared that story and segued to there, because as soon as you did, there are like there's 2 people. There's a lady at the shop, and she's exactly like that Indian woman you're speaking about. Just absolutely, just all love, just all love. And then there's this other guy, so I have to mix it up between the 2. And
Love
he's
them
just
both.
amazing. Yeah, he's like same again. He knows the order and just gives love and a smile. And to me, I always say that is the most profound shit. In the supermarket, you smile at someone, you give them just that little bit of like, hey, you're a human, I'm a human, we're having a day, you know, like that to me is
Yeah.
powerful shit.
Yes, it is. And they inspire you in that moment.
Mm,
Like, how can you not walk out of their presence and just feel so good? It's
yeah.
just like, and you imagine if more of us, and that's where the vibration, you know, we just keep rising, and eventually it just shatters, you know, any negativity that was feeling like it was there, gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like that. Just like magic. It's bloody brilliant.
Mm,
Oh,
love.
I'm making sure I'm sticking to the time. Hang on. We still got more time. I don't know. Where are we at?
I don't know. I think we've been talking for about an hour. So wherever.
Okay. Okay, cool, cool. This is just, well, I'm the future of medicine I've got written down here. Well, we've already got that. Um because normally, yeah, there was all this stuff that I wanted to say, but you've just freaking nailed all this
Wait.
stuff. It's just bloody brilliant. It's bloody brilliant. I feel like I need to pull out my the book again, that Return to Love, as well. Yeah.
Mm,
What else have you got happening? What I mean, and actually there is something else. You speak about your father quite a bit. He to
mm.
me sounds like an incredible man,
Yeah,
and
he's
he has
lovely.
helped shape you, hasn't he? Yeah.
It's so funny because you look at both your parents and they offer such like a unique like beauty, each of them, and both completely different. So
Mm.
say from my dad, so dad's an MD and he's a GP, and he you know, growing up, he's very intelligent but just completely accepting like of us and anything that we want to do. You know, you sometimes hear people and they've got to live up to the expectations of their parents, or you know, maybe there's, and it's just with my dad, I remember he used to talk about his patients and how people would come in and they say, oh, I'm so disappointed, you know, my 12-year-old whatever is just like got, you know, suspended, whatever. And I remember him fully just saying to us, like, I can't even comprehend the feeling of being disappointed in you kids. He's like, you're my kids. He's like, I just don't think you could do anything that would ever make me feel so. It's honestly like a foreign concept to him. And you can just see that in the entire way he has lived our life. So he's in his 60s now. And I'm not sure he has ever had one critical word of me in my entire life. It just doesn't
Wow.
even, it doesn't even, you know, register for him. And so the beauty of that is that I get to feel free and loved unconditionally to be and do whatever it is I want. So a lot of people often ask, you know, well, how did your dad feel about you being a homeopath when obviously our careers are quite at loggerheads, and we, you know, approach health and disease so differently. And, you know, we just have just respectful conversations. It's like, yeah, you do that way. Oh, I wouldn't do that. And yeah, so he's really beautiful. And I love that he, you know, like sometimes people would think like with doctors or something, maybe you'd be a bit uppity or a bit like keeping up with the Joneses. But it's so funny if you met my dad, because he is just the most like down to earth. Like you'd look at him and it's just like, it's so funny. Like he just could not care. Like I lived with my dad for a while just before I got pregnant with my first baby. And so for like 3 years there or something, I was living with my dad. And it was just like hilarious to see like the way that he lived, how much he didn't care about anything, you know? So he's really beautiful. And then what I love about my mum is, so she was a really successful real estate agent. And so she created like her own office and like employed all my siblings and cousins and aunties and stuff. And the thing that comes down my mum's family line is this like real generosity and looking after like her community. So you see that in the interactions of them just constantly in business. And this is where I guess I've come to think that business can be done well and everyone can feel like they're winning. It can be like a community where we are all making a difference. We're all well paid. We're all getting what we need here. And that would come from my grandfather. So that's her dad. And it's just that I think the beauty of generosity, of realizing that, you know, money is just energy. It's not something that you need to hold on to. You always give it and spend it. So one thing that my grandfather used to say to my mum is, you know, never be afraid to like spend your money on all these different things. You know, even if you're going to get your car detailed, feel good about like giving your money to these people who are doing an amazing job for you so that you can go out and continue to do the amazing sphere, you know, that you do. You know, you don't need to hold on to everything, like feel free to like give to everyone. And like, you know, I have a memory of my grandfather when we were young, and they had these people that worked for them, and they weren't related, but they'd worked for my grandparents for maybe, I don't know, like 5 years or something. And they were just like a real young family. They had two young kids. And I remember they must have, my grandfather and grandmother must have just told them that they were going to give them money for a house deposit. And like they were hysterically crying. And I'm like young and I'm looking, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? And my mum sort of explained to me like, oh, Nanny and Poppy are giving them, you know, some money so that they can buy a house. And, you know, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, you know, all righto. And as you get older and you look back at like that generosity and like that kindness for people that aren't related to you and aren't your blood, and you're not going to get that back, but it's just a fact that I love you and I can see how hard you're working, and we've got money and we'd just love to give this to you. It's like realizing that money is just money, and you know, people don't need to hold on to it, and you don't need to hoard it. And yeah, we can share and just be like, just so kind to each other. And so, yeah, just watching my mum in business. So I worked for my mum too. And I saw like how much she donated and how much like kindness. And you just see all the time with people like that who give so freely. Like success just followed her. It followed my grandfather. Like everyone wanted to sign their house up with her, even though she's not like a salesy sort of person. She's really kind of quiet. And it's like, that is a vibration of generosity, of just like, it will come to me, it's all fine. And, they volunteered, my grandparents retired when they were 40, and they just volunteered at all their time at all of these organizations. So like, 20, 30 years of volunteer work. After that, they're like, we're done in the real working life. And now we'll just do that. And I think, I love that about my mum and that family, because it helps, when you're in business and you want to have an influence and treat people kindly and remember why you're even doing it. It would be easy to get lost in, I don't know. I can see how people get lost. I can
Yeah.
see how when people start to make a lot of money, I can see why even biblically they say, things about like money is the root of, and it's not, but you can see how people get thwarted and they start to think, oh, now I can have anything I've ever wanted. And so just keeping that at the core, why are you even doing it? And that's when things become very easy for you, I think, when you're
Mm.
working.
Yeah. I mean, I just love listening to you talking about your family. Like, I mean, the fact that I mean, there'll be people out there going, "Wow, your dad never said a critical thing." Like,
No,
and
never.
just love, and to me, that is the picture of how it should be. That we should be loved and accepted for exactly who we are, and that is such a beautiful gift that both your parents have instilled in you. And I think that's why, as I'm talking to you, I just really feel like I'm a feeler. I'm not filling you up. But I can just feel how big your heart is and how your family has helped shape what you're doing now. And it makes so much sense that they were your parents and that those people helped them, and just to be able to then do what you are doing, because it needs a big heart. It's a big hearted job. And that's the thing that's going to shift and already is shifting so much. I just think it's so powerful and so beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. No, it's beautiful. And this is sort of what we mean when we look back on our lives and it's
Mm,
like everything was aligned perfectly to teach us what we need to know, the right parents. And like for some people, they will have a very different experience, like with their parents.
mm.
Um, but that was unique to you for you're going to bring into the world. And so, yeah, none of our lives are without struggle. Absolutely not. But it's in that the growing pains really make us like powerful and strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's the thing. Like I mean, I do believe that we chose to come here at this time, and that we want to have the experiences that we are. Doesn't mean that they're easy or take away from some of those things, but whoever we chose and wherever where we are, that is to help us with the next part of our story, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oh, Melissa, you're just so fabulous. I've absolutely loved hearing your wisdom and just all the incredible things that you're bringing to the world. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to share before we do?
No, that's just
No.
perfect. What state are you in? I'm
I'm
sure
in
I'll make something.
Adelaide, South Australia.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you'll have to come up for one of our next big parties. I'm sure Dale will come. We've got to all
Yes.
come. But
Yeah,
we love
absolutely. I'll be high-fiving you and giving you, actually, I'll be hugging your face off. That's what I
yeah.
do.
You'll be feeling me up, won't you?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, I've just loved it. I really just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And while I'm thanking you as well, I'd love to take this opportunity to thank you at home for tuning in to this bloody phenomenal chin wag with the one and only Melissa. It has been awesome. So thank you so much for being here. As always, subscribe, leave a comment. Always love hearing from you. Share it around, all that sort of fun stuff. Thank you so much for always doing that. So again, before we wrap up, actually, goodness, where can people find you and what have you got happening at the moment? And I'll put all of those links in the description and show notes.
Sure. So Instagram is really where I do any of my, teaching, or that's where I am present. And then what we've got going on at the moment, we do have a course for people who want to be a homeopath that launches in September. So we're madly doing our finalized sign-ups at the moment. Other than that, we'll be doing another intake in 2 years for people who want to get in and amongst it. But yeah, that's where we're at. So people probably see RMDY Collective in certain things, and hopefully in the next couple of years they'll be seeing the RMDY ranches get going.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to that. I want to be on the ranch. I'm sure there's heaps of people who do too.
For sure.
That's so good. So I'll put all those links in the description so you can connect with Melissa. Yeah, basically just thank you again for being on the show and the awesome human that you are.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Melissa.